Hello and welcome to Season 12, Episode 20 of the Ubuntu podcast. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about what Alan did in Canada. As he's back, I'm joined by Alan.
Hello.
And Martin's still away, so joining Alan and me is your friend and mine, Stuart Langridge.
Hiya.
And I should probably have said that I'm Mark. Hello, chaps. How's it going?
Tickety-boo.
Excellent. So, Alan, what have you been up to? It's been a while since we've seen you, but I'm sure you've been up to many, many things.
Yes, lots of things. I started another podcast. Stuff you guys, I'm out of here. No, I was on holiday a few weeks ago in Portugal, and I had this crazy idea after a brief chat with Stuart Langridge, who is with us today. We had a brief chat on Telegram while I was sat by the pool in Portugal about how it would be possible to use voice messages in Telegram to deliver audio to lots of people via a channel. And it turns out I was right. It is possible to do that because I've done it about 10 times now. And I created a little thing called Telecast with Popey as an experiment. It's not really a proper podcast. It's just me chatting into my phone. But yeah, it's quite good fun.
It is actually really cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's got downsides in that you have to have Telegram in order to receive the audio, unless I go out of my way to extract the audio and put it somewhere else, which I did after 10 episodes, but I didn't do it for each episode one by one. But yeah, if you want to see and what all the fuss is about, just I tweeted about it recently, and we'll put a link in the show notes. What have you been up to?
I have been playing some games. I've been playing some roguelike games.
What are roguelike games?
Well, it's a sort of genre of role-playing games that tend to be in a kind of dungeon crawler setting, but they are they're usually very difficult and procedurally generated, so the exact game you get is different each time you play. And the best ones, the more you play and the more you die, the more you learn so that you do better next time.
Which ones have you been playing recently?
I've been playing Slay the Spire, which is one that Matthias spoke to us about a few weeks ago, which is like a sort of virtual deck building card game. And I've also been playing another one which was recommended in our Telegram group called Crypt of the Necro Dancer.
Okay.
Which is a bit of a fun twist where you're going around a dungeon and fighting monsters, but you have to move on the beat of the music, and all of the monsters move on the beat of the music, and they each have a certain pattern. So you have to learn the dance that the monster does in order to defeat it without getting hit. And it's very hard but very addictive.
It's weird. Crypt of the Necro Dancer. Have you played Shattered Pixel Dungeon?
I have, yes.
Because it's excellent, and it's in. You can just install it on your Ubuntu desktop. So I'd play it all the time.
I made a snap out of it.
Yes, I had it on my phone at one point. Actually, I didn't do very well at it.
Yeah, I have not yet ascended in it, but I have got all the way to the last level after quite a lot of perseverance.
Oh wow! Was it Crypt of the Necro Dancer? The only reason I know the name of that game is every so often there's an animated GIF of an elf girl, like pointing and bouncing, and she's wearing like elven kind of clothes that pops up on various image hosting websites. And I see it every so often. And in the comments immediately afterwards, there's always someone saying, "Where is this little dancing girl from?" And it is from that game, apparently.
Right. I don't think I've come across a dancing elf yet.
I don't know if it's part of the promo for it or a video or something, but that's the only reason I've never actually played it. That's the only reason I know the name of that game is because of that stupid animated GIF.
It was on sale for £3, so it seemed silly not to give it a go, and I do enjoy it.
Oh, worth it, yeah.
Right, well, that's enough chat about silly games. Let's get on with the show. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Alan's missed a few shows, but he's back now. So let's talk about one of the things that he was up to while he was away. Alan, where did you go?
Well, I went to Portugal, I went to Centre Parks, and I went to Canada. So let's talk about Canada.
That sounds like a good one to talk about.
Yes, because that's work related. It was a work trip. Ordinarily, it's something that other people higher up in the company go to, and I don't ordinarily go to, but all the people who would normally go were on vacation. So I got, I stood in for them by going to the event, and it's called a mid-cycle roadmap sprint.
Wow.
Okay.
Sounds super exciting, doesn't it?
Do you fill up your bingo card with that one?
Just a bit. So you know how Ubuntu releases every 6 months, and so after an Ubuntu release, there's lots of things that happen within that 6 monthly cadence. It's not just Ubuntu. There's other products that fit that 6 monthly cadence, and afterwards, after the release, there's a roadmap sprint where there's planning done for the next release. So, after 1910 goes out, there'll be a planning sprint, which is in Paris, I think. Oh, no, it's in Vancouver, I think. And that'll be a planning sprint for 2004. But midway through the cycle, there's a catch-up roadmap sprint, which is what this one was, a mid-cycle roadmap sprint, to make sure we're on course and see if there's anything that's in danger of not getting delivered in time for the end of the cycle, and see if we need to reprioritize work or if there's any new work that's coming. So it's a lot of planning, a lot of meetings, that kind of stuff.
So this is just a canonical thing then? This isn't something where you invite members of the community and people to do like press coverage and things like that? This is more of a inward-facing secrety thing.
Inward-facing secrety thing. We don't tend to call them that, but yeah, okay. It's not something that external people are invited to because it's all about internal company process and, do we have the right resources to deliver this product, and, what feedback are we getting from customers about how this product is performing, and what can we do to make this product perform better, or what have we learned from the last 3 months, and what do we need to change for the next 3 months, that kind of stuff. And if there's anything that needs to be pushed back to the next cycle, those kind of conversations happen at these roadmap sprints.
So are you basically on target? I mean, probably can't answer this question, but...
So, yeah, there's going to be some stuff that happens there that is obviously company confidential that I can't talk about. But, and it's not just me. There's 110 or so people there. And these people represent all different teams within the company. So, some people who use Ubuntu, as far as they're concerned, Ubuntu is the desktop. And from other people's perspective, it's just the server. But there's like so many teams within Canonical that work on different products, like the LexD team are there, the Snapd team are there, the Snap Store team are there, the desktop and server people are there, but there's also people there representing Mia, which is not dead, and Multipass. And then I was there to represent with Sergio to represent Snapcraft and the Snap Advocacy team. And yeah, we're doing excellently. There's no problems for us. So obviously that's fine. But yeah, it is generally, there's like presentations in the morning and they're given to everyone. So each team has like between half an hour and an hour to stand up and produce some slides that say, here's where we are. Here's where we're expected to be in 3 months. Here's any things we've had to drop because of, something happened and we can't fulfill that promise that we were going to do and course correct, or we need more resources to do, this particular feature or whatever. So there's a little bit of just like raising awareness of what's going on in the company among everyone else in the company. And then there's a little bit of horse trading of, well, we need more resource for this, or this isn't going to land, or we need to postpone this for next cycle. And so, yeah, you could consider it completely boring, but it's all the necessary stuff of business to get products out the door.
Yeah. So you said there about awareness. So, and I mean, it strikes me, you're saying that, it's only sort of higher up people, but there's still 100+ people here. So there's quite a big operation going on. Was there stuff there that was being talked about which you just had no idea was part of the portfolio from where you sit in your team?
From my own personal employment point of view, I'm going to say no. Obviously, I knew all of it, but who's going to admit to say no? I didn't know any of this stuff.
Hey, I meet people at work who I didn't know that their thing existed all the time.
No, so there wasn't any product that I didn't know existed. We don't have. We've got a portfolio of products, but it's not like there's some guy working on something, buried in a room somewhere, and I've never heard of it. That can happen as a skunk works prototype thing that someone's been tasked to work on, and it's none of my business that they're working on it because they're in a completely different team. Yeah, that could happen, I guess. But it was more about learning where people are and what their priorities were. And obviously it's a bit different for me because normally other people go to this, like Martin goes to this, or my previous boss, Ev, who's now left, he would have gone to this, and other people in the team would have gone to this. So this was my first chance to see one of these where people are giving presentations and detailing, what's going on in their team. And so, yeah, there was certainly stuff that I learned. I was furiously typing notes and, quite happy to see how other teams were doing and how, it's a common practice for, showing graphs as your first slide of, what's our key performance indicators? Is the graph going up and to the right? The typical kind of thing you have in a that kind of sprint. And everyone was going up and to the right. So that's all good to see.
One of the, unless things have changed dramatically since my days at Canonical, one of the other nice things about this is because the company's almost entirely remote from an engineering point of view, at least, you get to actually see people who you've only spoken to on IRC before, whatever, and it helps to smooth the relationship a bit. I very much like the idea of companies being remote, and I like it when Canonical do it, but it is nice to put a name to the face sometimes, I find.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword. Working from home is fantastic. I can get Amazon deliveries. I can get a maintenance guy to fix the washing machine or whatever while I'm working, and I can be here when the kids get in from school. But from a work point of view, everyone is in a different office, and there is the possibility that sometimes you don't hear about stuff. And yeah, these sprints are. This wasn't an engineering sprint, so it wasn't expected that we would sit and work together, but you end up working, you end up having meetings with people, and someone from the design team will come over to me with a laptop saying, hey, I've done these mock-ups for something that you rely on. Do you want to review it with me right now? Now, typically they would have to book a slot in my calendar in order to do that. But because we're all in the same room, they could just pick the laptop up and walk over, just like you would in a normal office, right? Like anyone would in an office environment. And so that, it's good for accelerating things while you're there. And yes, it's also good for the social side of things. Like there are people who I work with who I see once or twice a year, and you can get that perception because they're remote and they're at the other end of an email. You don't have that closeness of relationship. I've worked in offices where people go down the pub at lunchtime or go out for a drink after work and socialize a little bit, and it breaks down some of the barriers, and it makes it easier to wander over to that person's desk, later in the week or another day, and the ice is broken, and that the barriers come up a little bit when you're remote from people, and so this gives you an opportunity to break those barriers down again. Totally.
So were you presenting? I know you mentioned your null snap previously.
Yeah, so I gave a presentation on the Wednesday morning, which was how the current state of play of Snapcraft and the Snap advocacy team, and so that's talking a little bit about. I stood up there with Sergio and Juan from the design team who worked on. If you ever look at Snapcraft.io, the web front end. His team did a lot of the design work and iterate on that, and they work on that really rapidly, and that's really awesome. And he talked about some of the new features that are coming and some of the things we already did, and Sergio talked about features in Snapcraft, the tool, and new features that are coming, and improvements and all that kind of stuff. And I was there more to talk about the advocacy side and how many snaps we've got in the store and the growth rate and, which are the high profile things we're doing, and also events that we're running, because myself and Martin do these Snapcraft summits, which are the ones where we do get external people in. We talk about those and what we've learned from them, and when we're doing the next one and all that kind of stuff, and that's good, because most of the other people in the company are software developers working on software, and we are some of the only developer advocates in the company. And so we have a very different perspective on things, and we're very external facing because we're always talking to developers all the time. And so it's interesting for other people to learn from us in the way that we talk to external developers and the things we learn. And it's also good for us to be able to pass that on to people and say, hey, we could improve this, or we could improve that. So, feedback we get about documentation, or feedback we get about startup time of snaps, or whatever it might be, we have to have a way to pass that on, and we do. And so, part of my presentation was to feed some of that back, and that goes down really well, because after you come off stage and everyone goes to get a coffee, they just come up to you afterwards and they're like, oh, tell me more about this, and how can we improve this experience? And again, when you're all in the same room, that kind of what they call it, hallway track that you get is just super valuable and really accelerates things. And you come up with ideas where you're at these things, and all of the necessary people for you to formulate that idea are standing right next to you, and you could just grab hold of them and say, hey, I've had an idea how we could improve this thing. What if you do this, and I do this, and improves things. It's a real accelerant to everything.
Well, thanks very much for letting us know about your trip to Canada.
No worries.
If you love the command line as much as we do, send us a command that will blow our minds, and we might even mention it on the show. Send your command line love to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
Now, this week's command line love was found by Stuart. Do you want to tell us what this love is about, Stuart?
Okay, this is not strictly a command, but it's a thing that happens on the command line. So you know how in a terminal window you've got bash running, and you can hit Control R and it searches back through the history?
Yeah.
Did you know that Control X does things as well?
I didn't. I know that it doesn't cut.
I didn't know any of this, and then someone mentioned a thing I had no idea about. If you hit Control X and then Control V, Bash will type its will print out its version number. And I thought, okay, that's weird, and it does work.
Oh, so it will.
And see, you're sitting there in front of a terminal trying it now, aren't you? And then I thought, well, why is that in there? But it turns out there's a bunch of other Control X things as well, most of which are not particularly interesting, to be honest with you. A couple of them sort of are. Like, if you do Control X, Control E, it will open up the line that you're currently in the middle of writing in your editor. Right, which means that if you're writing a complicated long command line, you want to be able to edit it in a proper editor, just Control X, Control E opens it up in Nano. Quite handy.
That's cool.
See?
I like that.
It's good, isn't it? There's Control X, Control X. It's described as alternates the cursor with its old position. But as far as I can tell, what it does is it goes back to the beginning of the line, and then if you hit Control X again, it takes you back to where you were. And I'm not sure why this is useful. But the one that I thought was interesting is if you're typing a command on the command line, which has got a wildcard in it, so you type ls and then space and then a star or star.txt or something like that, but you're not sure exactly which files that will mean, if you hit Control X and then star, it will expand the wildcard that you've typed in. So every time I run any kind of even vaguely destructive command with a wildcard in it, I'll always do ls and then the wildcard thing first, ls star.txt, just to make sure that I'm not going to delete any files. And this is a way of avoiding having to do that, if I remember it. But yeah, type a thing with a wildcard and then Control X asterisk, and it will expand the wildcard for you in line.
I think that the reason that a lot of this exists is because by default, Bash uses GNU readline, which is just a way of accepting text input, and it has these keyboard bindings for letting you edit stuff, but you can also set it to use VI mode, if you're more familiar with Vim for editing, then you can actually have it so that it'll let you do the kind of like movement commands and editing commands on your bash command line that you'd be able to do in Vim, which I think is quite handy, although I ended up turning it off because I I got too confused.
This is mind-blowing. There needs to be a cheat sheet of these.
Bash does so much stuff. I mean, I thought I was reasonably flash with Bash, but it turns out what I actually am is reasonably flash with the original POSIX shell from about 1985. And everything that's happened since then, that Bash does all this amazing whizzy stuff that no one knows about.
This is fantastic. I love this. I need a cheat sheet right now. Stat. Print it out. Put it on the wall because this is just brilliant.
We love getting your feedback. If you've got a comment about something you hear on the show, why don't you drop us an email on show@ubuntupodcast.org.
And now it's time for all your wonderful feedback. And first up this week, Brian Hall emailed in to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
Would it be feasible and of any value to be able to install and run snap packages on the Windows OS? Still enjoying your podcast, many years listening. You guys are starting to get the hang of it now. and just a suggestion for wallpaper on the next version of Ubuntu. How about the drawing of Mark's house? Oh, you should submit that. There's a wallpaper contest right now. You should send that in. That would be great. Let's just see what kind of reaction you get. We could maybe get all our listeners to go and vote it up. That would be great.
So snap packages on Windows, do we reckon that will work with WSL2?
It doesn't out of the box because WSL2 doesn't ship with System D.
Right.
Also, the kernel that you get with WSL is a Microsoft created Linux kernel specifically for WSL2. And I think it might be missing a few bits. I don't know if it's like the SquashFS parts or C groups or AppArmor or something, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in the kernel that needs to happen. And I don't doubt that at some point in the future, that might be possible. But at the moment, today, as it stands, it doesn't work. I mean, to be fair, there are people, there's a thread on the Snapcraft forum where someone has kind of bodged it to work, but it doesn't work out of the box.
Pablo Massa also emailed,
please consider adding timestamps on each topic of the episode's descriptions. Now, I think this is really unfair because every time I write the Bad Voltage show notes, I put timestamps on every single topic and it's absolutely fine.
I think he might be talking to us.
Well, then you should definitely do that. It's really useful. One of the neat things about it is if you put them in square brackets, then on the YouTube video, they get highlighted as links in the description.
Yes, and they do in some other podcast clients too. I think maybe we need to have a word with our producer to if they can give us the timestamps that the segments end up being at. Then we can whack them in quite easily. So maybe we should have a talk about that.
Yeah, the other thing you need to beware is that once you've done this, people will occasionally show up and say, why don't you put chapter markers in your MP3? So, this might not be a door you want to open, but having timestamps is actually really useful.
This is not the first time we've been asked this over the 12 years that we've been doing this. And we've resisted just because it's more work for us. And I don't know if there's an easier way to do it. If we could crowdsource it, if people want to go back over the last 12 years of episodes and figure out what all the numbers are and give them to us and we'll copy and paste them into wherever, maybe.
You can transcribe them while you're there.
Well, yeah, you say that. I mean, it strikes me that it wouldn't be impossible for someone, because you've always got the same stings in between segments. It wouldn't be impossible for someone who was reasonably good with, audio processing or whatever, to write a little script which looks for those and then outputs the timestamps. That might be an interesting project for one of your listeners. I'm not doing it, but
do you mean like that script I wrote for Foss Talk Live?
I do.
A few years ago?
I mean, exactly. But that sounds like the sort of thing where someone might actually be able to knock out a prototype in a weekend. And then if you run it on the back archive, they can just send all the timestamps over to you, maybe.
Yes. Feel free, Pablo Massa, who sent that first email in. If you would like a project, that sounds like an interesting project to do.
My code is on GitHub somewhere to get you started. Sam van den End emailed.
On my Ubuntu-based media center, Bionic with the hardware stack enabled, the recently released 5.0 hardware enablement kernel does not play nice with the NVIDIA 340 driver. Bug report. What have I learned from this? Ubuntu breaking on a standard upgrade is very, very rare. It was quite the surprise, really. Linux and Ubuntu tend to make you forget how old your hardware is. I bought this system in November 2012 and I never reinstalled it, just upgraded LTS to LTS. Nearly 7 years later, it appears I'm running old rubbish Atom and Ion without realizing it. Also, Grub Customizer, which makes it easy to configure Grub to boot the 4.18 kernel as a workaround. With this older hardware running, I can contribute and participate in a pre-release cycle or process. Can I participate in a pre-release cycle or process to test these kernel upgrades before they hit the wider audience without upgrading every single package on the system to the test version? Yes. There is a process called SRU, Stable Release Update, and there is a page, if you use your favorite search engine to look for the phrase pending SRU, I think it's a generated HTML page that's somewhere on people.canonical.com. It's for internal use, really, internal in the Ubuntu project. It's not meant to be a public facing thing, really. But what it is it lists all the packages that are waiting to be accepted into the various releases of Ubuntu that are supported. And it lists them broken down by release. So you pick what release you're on, you scroll down and look for whatever package you think might be interesting to test. And if you look across, it has a link to the bug where that issue is being tracked. So whatever that update fixes, or even if it's just a bump to the release of the kernel or the driver or whatever, there'll be a link to a bug. And the color of that bug report, as indicated in the HTML page, will indicate whether someone has marked it as failed or whether it's passed, or whether nobody's tested it yet, or nobody's marked it yet. And so you can cherry pick ones and say, okay, I'll go and read that bug report, see what it is that this does. Is it just a software update, or is it actually a bug fix? And then you can test it, because it tells you how to do it. It tells you what to do to update that one package, so you don't have to upgrade the whole world. Update that one package, and then you can report on that bug your success or failure, and then you tag it. There's a tag you can put on the bug, verification done. And when you put verification done, it changes the color of the bug, and that lets the SRU team know that in a few days' time, once it's baked there and a few people have said it's okay, it can then be put into the Ubuntu archive. So yes, you totally can do that.
Nice. Ian Forbes also mailed.
Just to let you know that I love your music. It sounds like Charleston music. Quite frankly, if the Charleston is good enough for the Mos Eisley Cantina, it's good enough for me. Ignore the cultural deserts that decry it. It's a jolly, upbeat, quirky tune that is a great antidote to the times in which we live just now. Never change it. P.S. Who found that music and decided it would be good for the podcast? I'm sort of assuming that Creative Commons was one factor, but I'd very much like to know the origin story.
So it's not actually Creative Commons, is it? But it's out of copyright because it's very, very old.
Yes, it's out of copyright because it's before it was recorded in 1927, I believe. And it was Tony that found it when we were looking for music. He found it on archive.org. I don't know that the original recording that we originally grabbed is still there or not, but that's where it originally came from. In fact, I think I have a printed copy of the music as well. Just as a memento that Tony gave to a couple of us some time ago.
Yes, and if you are looking for music from that era, I'd listen carefully to the lyrics before you use it anywhere, because we did find that some of the songs from around that time were not so suitable. Jason Armstrong mailed.
Had I known Mr. Pope was coming to Toronto, I would have invited him to visit. By the way, I can tell you are from far away because you pronounce the last T in Toronto. Locals pronounce it slightly differently. Toronto is probably the closest phonetic approximation.
I like how you said Toronto in an Australian accent there.
Yeah, I did there. I don't know what was going on there. I can't do Canadian accents.
So did you enjoy Toronto then?
Yes, I did enjoy Toronto. Yes. I still think it's Toronto, so I'm going to carry on saying Toronto.
Yeah, let's call the whole thing off.
Torin Doyle left a comment on our website.
Pilot Wings was the first game I played on my Super Nintendo back in Christmas 1992. Happy days.
And a little aeroplane emoji. Yeah, I think this is referring to the artwork that was in one of our previous episodes. They all seem to be computer games. Interesting.
Yeah, they seem to be evoking some fond memories among our listenership.
Yes, they're working.
And Nigel Verity dropped us a mail.
With all the favourable buzz around the Pinebook Pro, I'm planning to get one. The Pine 64 store doesn't make any particular distinction between US and export orders. It just says that import duty is not included in the price, which is fair enough. I've never imported a PC from outside the EU, so I don't have any clue as to the procedure. Do you get a bill from HMRC before it's released from customs? Do you just keep stum unless or until they catch up with you, or what? Any ideas, or perhaps you could throw the question open, as I'm sure a lot of listeners will be in the same situation in the coming months. Well, as with anything that you import into the UK, there are laws that you should abide by. There are taxes you should pay, and it's up to you to decide to investigate those taxes and fees that you have to pay when you bring it into the country. However, personal experience, sometimes you get a notification from the post office that says, hey, we've got a parcel, come and get it. By the way, you owe us money, and we're not going to give you the parcel until you give us the money. And we've added an extra bit of money on top for the admin fee. So it's like whatever, 20% VAT plus a bit. Sometimes it just falls through your letterbox. And sometimes it gets held up somewhere and you get a letter and you have to do customs stuff, in my experience.
Yep, I've had all three of those happen. I think the admin fee is basically you tried not to pay the tax penalty money.
Yes, you marked it as a gift when it blatantly isn't.
Yes, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's tax, you know. You kind of have to pay it. And some people will try and evade this and do what they can to get out of paying it, but you know, that's just one of those things. Living in this country, if you're bringing things in from outside the EU, there is VAT levied on it.
And that's all your feedback. And that's all for episode 20. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you for joining us yet again, Stuart, and stepping into Martin's considerable shoes.
Now, that's not very kind, is it? You wouldn't have said that if he was here.
What's wrong with having big feet? Yeah, if you'd like to get in touch with us, there are numerous ways of doing it. You can email show@ubuntupodcast.org. You can come chat in our Telegram group. You can tweet us on Twitter. And if you want a VPS, get it from Bitfolk.